Did you know that the Last Week in Denmark newsletter is available in 8 languages? Hey there, this is Fionn from the Last Week in Denmark podcast, and every week you guys are tuning in to hear me and my fellow co-hosts talk about the top news of the week in English. But let's be real, we're all internationals, so not only are you speaking English every day, you're probably also speaking a bit of Danish, but you've probably also got your own native language as well, like the multilingual master you are. So why not treat yourself to the luxury of being able to read Danish news each week in your own native language? So head on over to lastweekdk.substack.com, that's lastweekdk.substack.com, and sign up for our newsletter delivered to you every single Sunday.
Hello everyone, welcome to episode 21 of the Last Week in Denmark podcast with Kalpita and Golda. Every week we bring you the top stories and updates from the last week in Denmark, all in English with personal reflections and an international perspective. This week we have 3 really interesting topics. 1, international will become the majority in Denmark by 2096. 2, Denmark's population has now reached 6 million. And 3, Denmark opened doors for African students. So, Kalpita, how are you? How was your week?
A bit distressful, to be honest. Plane crashes, starting old wars anew. But on the positive side, I live in Denmark, so I have a lot to be grateful for. The sun is shining. That's another positive. So it's been a mixed bag, but I'm staying positive. What about you?
Yeah, I completely understand what you mean. It's been some really devastating news this week, and also just a really tough week. Very, very, very busy in my personal life, and then with everything that's happening externally, I completely crashed Friday evening. So I'm at the same time grateful that there is sunshine even here in the UK.
Well, exactly. I mean, I'm sorry to hear you crashed, though. I mean, that must be really, really hard. It's good you're taking a slow weekend.
Yeah, very, 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 very slow weekend. Absolutely don't want to do anything. But this podcast, of course. I think we can dive right into topic number 1, which is internationals will become the majority in Denmark by 2096. I think both of us kind of can understand what it's like being international. Now we have lived in Denmark quite a long time. You have. Can you please remind me how long you've been in Denmark?
I've been here for about 9 years.
Yeah. I always wonder at what point do you stop considering yourself an international then? But a recent projection suggested that due to low birth rates and rising immigration, a majority of residents in Denmark could soon be immigrants by their descendants. So what are your thoughts around this?
I mean, just the fact that you're still an international, even if you're a descendant, is a bit sad. My first thought was, well, I won't be alive by that time, for sure. But then also there's an assumption that things continue going the way they are going right now. That means that we have more internationals coming in than internationals leaving, which is a great thing, I think. But I do not believe that Denmark is going to be the only country to have more internationals than locals. That'll probably happen around the world. And I mean, we have been doing that for so many years now, centuries actually. We've been migrating in big numbers as well. So I suppose that's just bound to happen, and it's the course of nature. What's your thought on this?
I think, as you said, it signals like a long-term demographic shift where diverse global populations will become foundational in Danish society. And I think from like a Danish perspective, there is heavy on learning the language, Danish culture. So personally, I don't think that will disappear, but I do think that cultures evolve. And I think this kind of underscores the need to integrate immigrants into like structures, institutional structures, cultures, I would see it more as like a global trend, as you mentioned, that globally everywhere will be much more diverse than it is now. People are traveling. We are changing visa laws. Some people are opening up borders. There's also lots of war. So there's displaced people, millions of displaced people already. So I think it's really just signals it's time for us to really prepare rather than becoming polarized, and just seeing how we can move forward in the most positive way, being open-minded, but yet also being respectful. That was my thought initially.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important to keep our minds open and be respectful, especially in this tumultuous environment. The other thing I also thought about is that most of this migration could be a result of climate change more than anything else, which is also something we need to consider, because it's not that the earth is getting younger and younger. We are using all resources, whether it's green energy or not, and we are exploiting our resources as well. And most immigration these days is because of climate change already. But I also find it very hopeful from a perspective that, right now most internationals are struggling, but this is a hopeful picture of, you are going to have enough and more opportunity and a sense of normalcy where you make Denmark your home, for example, and grow enough to actually be the majority, which is strange to even say it, but that looks positive future for people struggling right now. So there's hope, you guys.
Yeah, there's definitely hope. And as someone who migrated into Denmark because of war, and now I would say consider Denmark my base or my home, I definitely think that we have moved. I like the conversations that are being had now in Denmark in terms of the contributions of immigrants and the fact that immigrants help to also build. And the reason why I'm saying this is because there's this perspective of how this could potentially be a bad thing, maybe our people are being wiped away from, I'm thinking the perspective from like ethnic or indigenous Scandinavians may have that feeling of, oh no, we're being wiped away, or we don't have enough, like our birth rates are low. But I also think the positive things is that, you have a new workforce. Immigrants usually on average have more children. And like you said, if someone is looking to settle their life in a new place, they would want to make it home or call it home, and not necessarily form parallel communities, but have more of a mix. Where we can celebrate all communities. Immediately I think of Toronto. That's what I think of when I read this. I think of this thing of like you come and there's just a mixture of cultures and you can feel at home, and being Danish or what it means to be Danish kind of evolves past skin color, past ethnicity, but rather towards a strong national identity.
Yeah.
That's at least where I am now.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. It's also another thing to consider that Danes are doing a good job of mixing their own, for the lack of better word, breed. They're not just mixing cultures, but they're also marrying outside of the ethnic diaspora of being Danish or Scandinavian, and that's encouraged. It's also encouraged to have more than one child. There's a lot of government subsidy and all of that going around for that too, and that's not because they want to keep ethnic Denmark, but it's more about having citizens who will turn the economy and keep the older generation supported. And I think that's a problem across the world. Even the most populated countries right now are doing things to make sure that their population is not controlled but actually thriving, and that's China, India, to every country in Europe as well. So birth rate is becoming a concerning issue, even if we see immigration to be the future.
Yeah, exactly. And that leads into our next topic, which is that Denmark's population has reached 6 million. As of May 1st, 2025, Denmark's population officially reached 6 million, a first in its history, growth is mainly driven by net immigration as birth rates decline, which is something we have just been speaking of. So what are you thinking? 6 million? I'm sorry, but I thought we were 7 million. I've been out here in the international global world saying that we are 7 million in Denmark.
No, we just became 6, and I think that's great. I think we have the potential to become more. We need more. If that's internationals or locals, that doesn't matter. Population is good. Having kids is good. I think people should have more kids. If I could, I would as well, especially if we are in the right age. There has been conversation in the press as well of how the government can support families and women to have more children in terms of health and in terms of a good life, economy and work and everything. And there was, I was watching the news the other day while having my lunch, and I saw some politician also went on stage at Folkemødet, where she spoke and she spoke and probably will propose in the parliament session that families should be supported with more holiday time when your kid is sick, for example, and be, if not better, at par with other Scandinavian countries, especially Sweden and Norway. Right now, families do not have as much leverage when the baby is or kids are sick and they can't take as many sick days, which is in the way, and also improving economy of the family unit, because we need more babies, and babies are cute. They're nice.
Yeah, babies are cute. They are very, very cute, but they can also be a lot of work sometimes. But yeah, this shocked me a little bit. I honestly always thought we were more, but we are really a very small country, and that's why there's just so much potential in terms of Denmark and in terms of some of the problems that we have in terms of like an elderly population that is growing and who's going to take care of them, and welfare system, who's going to sustain it. So I think we're headed in the right direction, at least.
Oh yeah, that's a good way of looking at it, other than me saying have more kids.
You know, there was a commercial some years ago where they were, I don't know if it was SAS or Norwegian, that was saying if you have a kid on vacation, you can get some type of prize. Book a ticket, go have babies.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I know there was a Momondo ad that said, do it for your mum.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There was a Momondo ad many, many years ago where they set the scene of having a vacation, and it was based on this data that people in Denmark have intimate relations in the time of the vacations because they're away from home, less stress and la. And with the message that do it for your mum needs, I mean, she's old and she needs time with grandkids. So do it for your mum, take a holiday, make a baby.
Wow, I didn't see that one. That's a funny one. It's so funny because we're such a liberal country in my perspective, but then the way that comes off, it can be a bit of like a conservative message. Like, come on, mommy wants her grandkids.
I like the openness, but I also like the boldness with it. It's one thing to openly talk about it, but it's another to sort of encourage openly saying, hey, take a vacation. We all know what you do on your vacation, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I like how all these three topics are around immigration, because then we get into the fact that Denmark opens doors for African students. Denmark has announced a new scholarship program allocating 430 million krones over the 8 years to attract roughly 230 African students annually, covering both education and living expenses. Scholarships are part of a broader bilateral strategy, the Africa strategy that was launched last year, 2024 to 2025, which is aiming to enhance Europe's global influence and foster ties with African nations. So these students will benefit from existing EU programs like Erasmus and stronger academic partnerships with Danish and African universities. What are your thoughts around this?
I mean, my immediate thought is it sounds really good, especially if they're supporting students with housing as well as scholarships, if I understand it correctly. And that is almost like being at par with SU, right? You get you get supported while you take your education. But then there's also such a dearth of talent in Denmark, and Denmark is looking for talent all across the world. They've done that with Asia. Or they are doing that with Asia, with the nursing projects they're putting out, and also people coming in from Nepal for doing all kinds of jobs, especially hard labor. And it makes sense that now they're looking at Africa in parallel to the democratic relations that they are strengthening with the continent as well. But I did see your post on LinkedIn, Golda, and you had some thoughts also because it was spoken about in Folkemødet as well.
Yes, it was. So I don't know if many people know that Denmark launched their Africa strategy. I felt like the press around this was very within the sector and not necessarily like an everyday, layman person type of information.
No, mainstream.
Yeah, mainstream. Yeah. So I was really happy that they brought it up for Folkemødet. I'm a bit bummed that I missed out on Folkemødet. I wish I knew earlier. In terms of this knowledge and innovation program for African students, I really like it. I do have some personal critiques, which is that I feel that as much as we are fostering equitable partnerships for both ways, I also would love to see perhaps, more Danish students doing exchange in African universities, only because we can risk this narrative of taking knowledge and talent from the global south into the global north, and therefore the global south then loses human resources for development.
Yeah.
So those are some of the thoughts that I initially had when I think this is brilliant, but I also really think that it shouldn't add to the brain drain that is currently happening. Because when we think about like the larger perspective of why people are trying to flee their homes or trying to go up to the global north or the west, it's usually because the place they're in, maybe they feel like it's not efficient enough or they can't get a job. But we have also found that a lot of like African entrepreneurs are creating plenty of jobs. Actually, I learned yesterday that 80% of new jobs on the African continent is actually being created by young entrepreneurs. So I think as Denmark is trying to build on these partnerships and these relationships, it would be really good to support locally led projects as well. And having, if they also have like Danish students come down, study in those universities and contribute to the innovation that is down there, then it seems more balanced in my opinion, where both people are both giving and taking and supporting the development. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. And I also see the value in it as well for both Denmark and for the entire African continent. I think that's something that they're trying to do with the Indian democratic relations.
Yes.
They've signed a treaty and now they're also encouraging investments in startups in India and also bringing Indian startups to Denmark as an expansion policy. That's what I heard. And I also reported on it for our LinkedIn team last year. When they had their first sort of a conference event type where the ambassador and a couple of businesses came in to talk about.
Yeah, I saw that actually.
Yeah, but I think that is the way forward for Denmark as well. And I hope that the thing they're doing with the African continent also leads to that, because it's not just students. Of course, they're the future, but there's also so much that's already going on that can be capitalized on, both from the African and the Nordic perspective, because the African subcontinent especially is becoming so important for so many reasons, not just the talent and the potential that's coming out of there, but also environmentally and in terms of healthcare and resources that the African continent has. It's incredible, and what the future they have is just mind-blowing, because it's one of the untapped regions in the whole world. So I do see your point in people coming into Africa instead of just doing the brain drain way that is going on across countries.
Yeah, exactly. And personally, I think this whole discussion about migration is not just a discussion that stops at like nationality or demographics or what's happening. I think as you spoke about, it's an integral part of Denmark's like economic and innovation future. We cannot avoid that we live in a globalized world, and being such a small country, I think Denmark also understands that we can't stand alone, right? EU is doing it both for the East and the global South, right? The only thing is that I think that because it's not mainstream, as you said, some people still have the old narrative of how some of these countries or some of these nations are either in the East or the global South. And so it's also, I believe, and the reason why I made that video on LinkedIn, it's also the responsibility of, I think, the government, the Danish government, of like investment funds, of NGOs who work in these countries to help change that narrative so that we move away from this aid donor type. They want us to go to Africa because Africa needs us, but rather that we need each other, and that these partnerships could potentially unlock resources beyond what we could have imagined. So I'm hoping for continued discussions. I know at Tech Barbecue in August, there's going to be a Nordic Africa Startup Summit, and there's also going to be a Nordic India Startups Summit. And that was sponsored, this year as part of projects under Tech Barbecue, just putting focus on these bilateral relationships, and I'm so excited. I can't wait to engage in the conversations and see what people are thinking.
That's some good news. Yeah, that's some good news to use summertime into something productive. What I have to admit, though, I am sitting here fuming a little bit. I do not like the narrative that is being portrayed, irrespective of whether it's Africa and India, that, these countries need us.
Yeah.
Like you rightly said. Yeah. Let's not forget there is a very, very selfish motive for why continents like Africa and other Asian countries that are being helped. And they're not being helped. They're being exploited for their talent and for their population because we in the North are not good at making babies. Just simply put, we do not have a future where our population is going to be able to support us. And we need the economy to run. And that's why we're preparing now to help, according to the Nordic narrative, other countries so they will help us in return, which is not the entire story.
Yeah, because the truth of it is that a lot of the resources that are already building nations historically came from Asia and the global South. So that's actually true.
Yeah, but I do think that what they're doing is great, and I hope the countries that are receiving these benefits of these bilateral relations are going to use this as an opportunity to empower themselves and grow themselves within for their own country and their own good, instead of being the master to the Western world yet again. I really hope and pray that they take the power in their own hands and become smarter and intelligent, and let not history repeat itself.
Yeah, I have hope. I think as long as we're no longer shying away from these bold statements of saying, hey, let's do it the right way, let's not repeat what we have done before, then I definitely think that there are better days to come. But I don't think it's going to be easy, but I definitely think that it's possible.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I have faith too. I have faith in my people, your people, that they're learning and they're doing the right thing for their own good and the country's good. If that means that they have to go out for a little and learn from the best or whatever world standard has been set and come back and do better, then I'm here for that as well.
Yeah, I am. Okay, now we are coming to the end of this episode. I really enjoyed it. It was really, really nice, especially as internationals, to speak into the changing environment in Denmark and how we as internationals can bring different perspective to what is happening, and the fact that Denmark is opening arms to some extent to this perspective and realizing that in a globalized world we should work together.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you want to hear more, please tune in to Last Week in Denmark podcast. We release an episode every week, and do not forget to read our newsletter.
Absolutely. Thank you for this riveting conversation, Golda.